Hey guys, welcome to the big Star Wars retrospective that I'm doing. So, in this video, I'm going to give you my general thoughts on all the Star Wars films that I've seen. The original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and of course the Disney era of Star Wars films. So, let's get into it, starting with, of course, the original trilogy. Now, I love these movies like anybody would. I mean, they redefine a genre. They're some of my favorite films out there. Love how they were able to take elements of the past, like old film serials, spaghetti westerns, samurai films, and even bits of religion, and they were able to make them something incredibly new. And yeah, I honestly feel like the fact that there's not much to talk about when it comes to these films except my own personal experience with them. Truth be told, I never saw these films in full until about two years ago, I'd say. And yeah, I love these. In fact, I even have the original trilogy, a despecialized widescreen VHS right here. And these are the special limited edition DVDs that they did in which, would get them one last time, in which it had, the first disc was the special edition, but on the second disc right here, it was the regular versions. But the problem was that they were done in a way in which they were taking from the rips of the laser discs that were made, and they were done pan and scan. No, not pan and scan, but it was done in which it was non-anamorphic. Meaning, unless you were watching an old square TV, the picture would then get pillar boxed and letterboxed. So, yeah. That is the one downside to these DVDs. But yeah, I honestly really don't think the fact that there's really much to say about them, aside from the fact that Empire Strikes Back is definitely my favorite, and I absolutely love how it took the original and went in a much more darker direction, and the twist ending with Vader was absolutely incredible. I think the fact that it was great. Now we move on to the prequels. Now, I'm going to go individually one by this. Phantom Menace, I think, is bad. There really isn't that many things that I can say are good about it. But there are still some positive elements. The John Williams score is incredible. Some of the worlds they were able to create are definitely imaginative. My only complaint was that I wish that there was a bit more practical elements than CGI elements, but whoop-de-doo. Darth Maul is definitely the coolest character in this movie, and the Duel of the Fates with Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul was the highlight of the movie. And the pod racing scene was actually not all that bad, but yeah. My complaints are your complaints. Bland / annoying / racist characters. Jar Jar Binks is probably one of the worst things that they ended up creating with this film. The actor who played young Anakin, Jake Lloyd, which it's surprising the fact that the least interesting person in this entire movie is the guy that grew up to be Darth Vader. It has a ton of political talks in which you can seem to not follow at all. But yeah, I do think the fact that this is an important movie because a lot of people forget that George Lucas, albeit with the first Star Wars, he did change the game. He didn't direct Empire and Jedi. And a lot of the complaints that people do have with those films sort of came from his input. And not only that, but if you look at the deleted scenes for Star Wars, you can see a lot of elements that are similar to the now, of course, the prequels. There were a lot of pointless scenes. There were a lot of political talks. And you can admit that there are a couple lines that do kind of fit in with this. Like, when Luke, for example, the scene in which Leia goes up to Grand Moff Tarkin's like, I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board. Could very much be played alongside, this could present a great danger to us all. But yeah, do not like Phantom Menace. Attack of the Clones, though, I think the fact that the action sequences themselves are great. They're really cool. Christopher Lee, it's cool to see him in this. I really do enjoy young Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor. And, of course, Emperor Palpatine is a ton of fun. But, yeah, man, I actually sort of think the fact that this is probably the worst Star Wars film. Because, to me, the greatest sin that a movie can commit is being forgettable. And that's exactly what this is. It's forgettable. aside from some action sequences here and there, like when Yoda ended up fighting Dooku, or the infamous line, "I hate sand, it's coarse, rough, and irritated, and it gets everywhere." It is a very forgettable movie, and that, to me, that is the greatest sin that a movie could commit, is being boring. And not only that, but they established the fact that Boba Fett isn't even an actual real Mandalorian, and that he's actually a clone of Jango Fett. And I did not like how they had to dub over the actor who played Jango Fett in the original trilogy for the special editions. They redubbed Boba Fett's character with the actor who played Jango Fett. But yeah, Phantom Menace I think is bad. Attack of the Clones I think is just forgettable. Now we have probably the best out of all the prequels, obviously, with Revenge of the Sith. Now this one I think is good because it actually legitimately had a story to tell. It actually showed you how Anakin became Darth Vader. That was something that we all wanted to know. In fact, we didn't really even need 3 prequels. We really only needed 1. We just needed to see how on earth Anakin became corrupted by the dark side, how he became Darth Vader, and how the Empire rose and the Republic fell. And not only that, but there were a lot of really great elements in this movie. Like, for example, Ian McDiarmid, the Emperor in... the same guy who played the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, returned for the prequels, which was really cool because you think that for prequels you would get a younger actor for the role, but no, they actually got the same guy, which is really cool. And not only that, but I also really enjoyed the performance of Ewan McGregor as a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. To me, he's really able to sell being a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. He very much sort of has that Alec Guinness-y sort of feel to him, if you will. And not only that, but seeing all the tragedies go down and hearing that incredible John Williams score is absolutely incredible. But there is still some problems that I do want to discuss. There are a lot of tonal shifts that do happen in this film. Like, 1 minute, it's a very fun, the opening scene, it opens with a battle in space, It actually sort of feels like Star Wars. Then, it ends up going back to Anakin and Padme. It's like, you're so beautiful. Well, that's only because I'm so in love. Yeah. There are still those lines of dialogue in here, but I am willing to excuse it because there are a lot of really good elements in here. Like, for example, the best scene in this entire prequel trilogy is the Opera House scene in Revenge of the Sith. There's, of course, Palpatine turning to Anakin and he's like, "Have you ever heard of the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" And how he's telling him this story. And there's a reason why he's telling him this story, too, because he's trying to tell him about a way you can bring the dead back to life, because Anakin is worried that with Padme pregnant, she may die during the childbirth, and he wants to be able to save her, and Palpatine is like, he's presenting to him this option via a fable. And he's like, "Is it possible to learn this power?" "Not from a Jedi." And thus, Anakin turns to the dark side, becomes Darth Vader, and the Emperor executes one of the darkest scenes in the Star Wars franchise with Order 66, in which the clone troopers stop and kill the Jedi Knights. There are a few survivors like Obi-Wan and Yoda, but there are very few survivors. And eventually, the ending results in 2 separate battles. One, Obi-Wan ends up fighting Anakin in Mustafar, which is something that we've always wanted to see. What was the fatal confrontation between those two like? And you have the Emperor fighting Yoda. That's awesome. But yeah, overall, I do think Revenge of the Sith is a good movie. There are a lot of bad elements in here. Like, for example, whenever Hayden Christensen is speaking lines of dialogue, I think the fact that it's not good, but when he's just emoting with his face, I think, yeah, that's what a young, angry Darth Vader would probably be like. So yeah, I do like Revenge of the Sith. And fun fact about Revenge of the Sith, this was released back in 2005, which was the exact same year that I was born. In fact, my family actually has a recurring thing in which my family members are born during the years of Star Wars films. Like, for example, my father was born in 1977, the year New Hope came out. My mother was born in 1980, which was the year Empire Strikes Back came out. And my uncle was born in 1983, the exact same year Return of the Jedi came out. And here I am, born in 2005, with the release of Star Wars Episode 3. And now, it's time to talk about the Disney era of Star Wars films. Now, these are definitely the films that are very divisive amongst the fan base. One in particular, which I will get to in a bit. But yeah, there are a lot of points of contention between everybody when it comes to the Disney era of Star Wars films. So, I think I'm going to give you my brief thoughts on all of them. In case you're wondering if I had to give ratings to all these movies, I would give the original trilogy, all of them, 10 out of 10s. Phantom Menace, I would give a 4.52, along with Attack of the Clones. Revenge of the Sith, I would give an 8. And now we move on to the other films. Force Awakens, I do really enjoy. I love the return of the original cast members like Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford. Love the new cast. Really enjoy Daisy Ridley as Rey, John Boyega as Finn, Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron, and probably my favorite character in the sequel trilogy, Adam Driver's Kylo Ren. Just, you think that on paper he would just sound like another Darth Vader ripoff, but the way he's shown, the way he's portrayed and acting, he's just such a complex character, and I really enjoy him. And that's a lot of it is due to the actor involved, Adam Driver. I think he's great. However, I do feel like the fact that, yeah, it is very similar to New Hope, but I do think the fact that they needed to do that, because this was the first film that Disney was doing under the Star Wars name, so they needed to show, yes, we can still do Star Wars right. So overall, I do really enjoy Force Awakens, although I do think it is a bit similar to A New Hope, but I understand why. So I'm going to give it a 9. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, is the first anthology film in the Star Wars universe and tells a story about how the Resistance and about how the Rebellion first got the plans to the Death Star. Some negatives that I did have with this that I felt like the performances from everybody were good, but the characters themselves I really couldn't relate to, and I thought they were a bit bland. Aside from maybe like one or two characters, like Alan Tudyk as K2SO, or even as the blind man who has his faith in the Force, or maybe even Cassian Andor and a couple others. But for the most part, there really aren't many memorable characters in this movie. Very much like the original trilogy. And I also think the fact that the CGI involving Grand Moff Tarkin was a bit awkward. And I really wish the fact that maybe they could have done the method in which, Marvel digitally de-aged their actors. That could have probably been a way. Or they could have just had it in which you could just see him from behind and you see his face in the window. That would have been awesome. But no, I understand why they had to do it. And it's also very uncomfortable, especially considering the fact they did the exact same thing to Carrie Fisher. And she ended up dying around a week or so after Rogue One's release. So, yeah. But overall, I do really like Rogue One. I thought the third act was incredible. And the scene with Darth Vader in the hallway was awesome. And not only that, but it very much felt like the first sort of grounded Star Wars film. Like, I could actually sort of like... There's a specific scene in which, like, they're looking above and they see a Star Destroyer up in the air. And you legit feel like you're looking at this humongous ship. And not only that, but the action sequences, particularly the entire third act of this movie, was incredible. When they go to the sand planet and go to get the plans, this film becomes amazing. The action sequences are incredible. It very much feels like the Saving Private Ryan of Star Wars. In fact, it's called Star Wars, so of course it would feel like a war movie. Really do enjoy it. Gonna give Rogue One a 7.5 out of 10. Now we have the most divisive movie on this list, that being The Last Jedi. I want to say this real quick. If you've made it in this far into the video, I want to say this. I get if you do not like The Last Jedi. I perfectly understand why. There are a lot of critiques and criticisms that I can understand people not liking this movie. But if you're going to list your opinion, list it in a way that actually is calm, collect, and makes sense. If you're just going to write down, I didn't like this movie because it didn't appeal to my fan theories, and I really did not appreciate the fact about how they ended up doing this, and yada yada yada. If you're going to be like one of those people in which they have why The Last Jedi is a complete cinematic failure, or anything like that, do not leave a comment, do not do anything. Just keep to yourself. We do not need any more of these kinds of people on the internet. But I did like The Last Jedi. I do realize that there are a lot of problems with this movie, and I'm going to get to them in a bit. But overall, I did like the movie. Now I'm going to go into why. But first, the cons of the movie. I very much felt like the weak stuff in this film involved General Hodo, Poe, Finn, and Rose Tico. I did feel like that was kind of the weakest part of the entire film. It just kind of felt like one long chase scene, and it felt like it was going on way too long, and the stuff involving Rose and Finn when they're on the planet, it didn't really gel with me. It very much felt like, in fact, perfect example, it felt very much like the diner in Attack of the Clones. It felt very pointless and a bit out of place, but yeah. Also, I wasn't really happy the fact that they ended up killing Snoke, and we knew nothing about him. Like, for real. Like, we didn't even get, like, one line of dialogue about who this guy was. However, in Rise of Skywalker, they are heavily leaning towards the fact that he actually was a clone of Palpatine. But let's not hold out hope for that. But for the meantime, we have no idea who Snoke is. And he was portrayed by Andy Serkis, who was an incredible motion capture actor. So, yeah. But now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to talk about the stuff that I liked. The stuff that I liked about this film is the stuff involving Rey, Kylo Ren, and Luke Skywalker. Now, I know a lot of people were not happy with the portrayal of Luke Skywalker. Supposedly Mark Hamill wasn't even happy with that. But I actually did sort of like the way that he was portrayed in this film, because Luke was very much dealing with the fact that he felt like he had failed Kylo Ren, because he had a vision that Kylo would Ben Solo at the time, he was going to kill everybody, and he was tempted to kill him, but he hesitated. Ben saw him, used the Force to destroy the cabin around them, and then proceeded to kill all the other students of Luke, and Luke ended up realizing his mistake that he made. And not only that, but the stuff involving Rey as well, and her trying to discover who her parents are, and her Force connection with Kylo Ren, and how they're able to communicate with one another even though they're like planets or galaxies away. They still can't communicate, and they can even bring a little bit of the environment back with them. That's actually a really cool Force ability. Not only that, but I think this is probably the best visually looking Star Wars film. And not just the cinematography, I do think the fact that it does come from the characters, specifically Rey, Kylo Ren, and Luke. In fact, I actually think the fact that probably it's the best looking Star Wars film since Episode 3. This was the most visual when it came to its storytelling. And I very much feel like the fact that this is probably the best looking Star Wars movie. Due to the way it's shot, the characters involved, the epic poses, it feels like an anime. It feels like a lot of these shots are from something like right out of Akira or Cowboy Bebop or any of those other really great animes. But yeah, I did like The Last Jedi. I understand if you have problems with it. Heck, I even have a friend who isn't particularly fond of the Disney era Star Wars films. I get it. But for me personally, I did enjoy it. And if you're going to comment down this video that why you think this film sucks, just so you could be able to bully me for liking a movie, then don't. What is the point of expressing this kind of anger on the internet? Why? There's no point. But yeah. And then we move on to the remaining film that I have to talk about before Rise of Skywalker comes out, Solo. Now, Solo had a lot of production troubles, from Lucasfilm originally hiring Phil Lord and Christopher Miller of Lego Movie and Spider-Verse fame to do the movie, then ended up firing them when they only had like 2 or so weeks left of production, replacing them with Ron Howard, ended up reshooting the entire movie, going over budget at over $275 million, bombed at the box office at $392 million. I actually like this movie. I will admit, we definitely didn't need to know a lot of things, like how Han actually got his last name, or, you know, where the name Chewie came from. But I will admit there were some cool things to see, like how we ended up doing the castle run. Like, that was actually kind of cool. And I will admit, for a fun space adventure sort of heist film, I actually think the fact that this isn't that bad. And I do think the fact that, given the material, Alden Ehrenreich actually does portray a pretty decent young Han Solo, but Donald Glover killed it as a young Lando Calrissian. He was incredible in that role. But yeah, I really did enjoy the movie. And yeah, although one thing I do have a problem with the fact is that unless the way you're seeing the movie is in almost complete darkness, the film is so dark you cannot see a thing. Like, I really wish the fact that maybe it was a bit more brighter so I could better be able to see everything. But overall, I did like Solo, so I'm going to give that a 7. So now that we've reached the end of the video, I'm going to give you my ranking of all the Star Wars movies. So, here we go. At the bottom of the barrel, we have Attack of the Clones, then Phantom Menace, then we have Solo, then we have Rogue One, then we have Revenge of the Sith, then Force Awakens, then The Last Jedi, then Return of the Jedi, then A New Hope, and my favorite Star Wars film out of the entire saga, The Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, this is just my overall thoughts on the whole all the Star Wars movies. I hope you guys are really looking forward to when I do a review of Rise of Skywalker this weekend. And for the record, when that video goes up, I want you to comment no spoilers down for the movie, because don't do that for people who haven't seen it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed probably one of the biggest videos I've done talking about a good 10 movies, which is ridiculous, but it's true. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tune in this weekend when I do my review of Rise of Skywalker. And tune in next week when I cover my thoughts on the whole, the entirety of The Mandalorian. So stay tuned for that. And as always, stay gold.